thousands of soldiers from US Army's elite 82nd Airborne Division have started arriving in the Middle East, putting one of America's most feared and lethal combat units within the striking distance of Iran. Interestingly, top US officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, keep saying that Iran is weaker than ever. But at the same time, they are sending thousands of these elite soldiers towards the conflict zone. Well, this mix of tough talk and major troop movements make it feel less like routine security and more like the opening moves of a possible US ground operation in Iran. So today in this edition of From the News Desk, we will tell you everything about this elite unit of American forces and what does the deployment of 82nd Airborne Division mean for the larger war in the Middle East. Now, multiple reports confirm that elements of the 82nd Airborne Division have been deployed to the US Central Command area of responsibility, which covers the Middle East. In fact, reports in US media say thousands of paratroopers from the division's immediate response forces have joined Marines, carrier strike groups, and other reinforcements. Now, it is important to highlight that the 82nd Airborne is not a routine garrison unit. It is the US Army's premium rapid deployment force designed to get combat troops on the ground anywhere in the world within about 18 hours of an order. In fact, its paratroopers are trained to parachute directly into hostile or unsecured territory, seize airfields, ports, or key terrain, and hold them long enough for heavier follow-on forces to arrive. When Washington sends the 82nd, it is sending not just soldiers, but a message that the United States is preparing for the possibility of a real ground fight, not just airstrikes and threats. This is why the deployment has changed the moods in multiple capitals. In fact, in recent years, the 82nd Immediate Response Force has been used to rush to Iraq after an attack on the US Embassy, reinforce NATO's eastern flank, and answer crises that demand combat-ready troops at very short notice. Now, moving that same force towards Iran gives President Donald Trump a ready-made option to seize choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, neutralize missile sites, or even secure infrastructure if he chooses to escalate from pressure to invasion. For months, senior US officials have argued that Iran's leadership is at its weakest point since the 1979 revolution, crippled by sanctions, internal protest, and now by heavy military blows. In fact, US briefings describe a regime under intense strain, while hawks in Washington and Tel Aviv pushed the line that this was the perfect moment to strike a very weak Iran. In public, the message has been clear. The Islamic Republic is broke, isolated, and badly damaged. Yet in parallel with this talk of weakness, the United States has been pouring military assets into the region, including extra carrier groups, larger air contingents, and new rounds of sanctions, including thousands of elite paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne. Now, the paradox is obvious. If Iran is so weak, then why reach for one of the most powerful tools in the US arsenal? And the answer lies in how US planners define weak. A state can be weakened but still very dangerous, especially when it has ballistic missiles, proxy militia, and ability to close sea lanes like the Strait of Hormuz. In that scenario, the first hour of any ground operation would be decisive, and the side that can grab key ground fastest will shape everything that follows. This is precisely what the 82nd is built to do: conduct sudden forcible entry with parachute assault, seize airfields and crossroads, and cut enemy command and missile units off before they can respond effectively. And if a ground operation option is taken up, then the 82nd could be the spearhead that leads from the front and opens corridor for a heavier US forces. Now, 82nd's reputation did not appear overnight. It was forged in some of the most daring operations of World War II. In fact, the division was first formed in 1917 as the 42nd Infantry Division, drawing soldiers from all US states and earning the nickname All-Americans, reflected in its AA soldier badge. In fact, after World War I, it was demobilized. But with the approach of another global conflict, which is World War II, it was reactivated in 1942 and transformed into the US Army's 1st Airborne Division. In July 1943, its parachuters executed the US Army's 1st Regimental Seas Combat Parachute Assault over Sicily, followed by another high-risk jump at Salerno in Italy later that year. Well, these World War II operations helped the 82nd to pioneer the modern concept of large-scale parachute assaults, striking deep inside enemy lines to break open a theatre from very inside. Ever since, from the World War II to the recent rapid missions in the Middle East and Europe, the 82nd Airborne has been the unit US President turn to when they need combat power in days, not weeks. And that is why its quiet flight towards Iran today feels so loud, and also it is a proof that if option of ground operation comes, the United States wants the 82nd Airborne Division ready to jump first.